Tommy with Elevation Every Weekend. Welcome back to the channel. One of my favorite bikes of all time, and one of the bikes I probably have been riding the most over the last year or so, is this bike right here, which is my 2022 Trek Procal 9.5. This bike came stock with Bontrager XR1 tires, and when I got the bike I expected those tires to be unimpressive and replaced fairly quickly. However, I actually ended up liking them quite a bit, and they stayed on the bike for the duration of their lifespan, which was over a year until they actually required replacement. Because they worked well, I ended up replacing with the slightly more aggressive XR2 tires in the Bontrager lineup, which are also XC tires, but just had a little more sidewall traction. And I ended up having a really good experience with those as well until, again, they were due for replacement. During all the time I had the XR1 and the XR2 tires on this bike, I had been compiling video footage and detailed notes on how the tires performed with the goal of putting together a comprehensive video review. However, last year Trek Bontrager decided to revamp their entire mountain bike tire lineup, so obviously I scrapped my review of those no longer available XR series tires. However, when it came time to replace the XR2s, I decided to try one of the new XC offerings available from Bontrager. And especially taking into account how I typically ride this bike, I decided to try out the lightest, fastest rolling option that they had, the Vallnord. So Trek Bontrager currently has two XC offerings in their lineup, these Vallnord tires that you see on the bike now, and the more aggressive all-around XC tires, the St. Anne. The Vallnord name refers to the XC World Cup trail system in the Pyrenees in France, which is renowned for its dry and fast conditions, which is primarily how I use this bike. As for some specs on these tires, they both come in at 2.4 inches in size, but the key being the 220 TPI thread count, which makes them extremely light and supple, but more on that in a moment. They are tubeless ready clincher tires, and they have a recommended sealant volume of 3 ounces. These tires come in at a very light 620 grams each, and the actual observed weight when I got them was very close to that. They have minimal tread with a harder rubber compound down the center for speed, and the larger knobs along the side have a medium rubber compound for better cornering grip. And they do have some nylon sidewall protection to increase the durability, considering that they're a high thread count 220 TPI tire. Now onto some riding impressions. First thing I'll say is these tires mounted up without too much drama. While they have a snug fit, it was not so much that I had to battle them to get them on, and they seated on the wheels easily with just a quick jolt from my air compressor. One of the first things I noticed about these was how supple these ride, which is surely due to the 220 TPI thread count. On the plus side, that makes them really comfortable to ride, especially at speed, and they really soak up things like gravel and any higher frequency trail vibrations that I'm used to feeling with more normal 120 TPI tires. On the downside, these probably aren't going to be the tires for you if you really do some spicy trail riding, especially if it involves sharp rocks. But thus far, these tires have not let me down yet. Even with the 2.4 inch size, they definitely don't seem to run on the higher volume side of things. They run noticeably smaller than the Maxxis Recon Race that I have on my Ibis DV9. Now the wheels on the DV9 are a wider 29mm internal width, whereas these wheels are probably 24 to 25 internal width, so that's definitely a factor. But even still, it's a pretty drastic difference. And for a reference point, these Vallnords come in somewhere in between the Maxxis Aspen and the Maxxis Aspen ST as far as the aggressiveness of the tread pattern, but they do so at a much lower pricing. Another obvious attribute that I noticed was how fast these tires roll. They really do feel more like a gravel tire to me, which makes sense based on how low profile the center tread is. When at high speed on hard-packed dirt or even pavement, you don't get that brodozer hum that you'll get from most mountain bike and especially fat bike tires that I'm used to. One thing that was a pleasant surprise is these tires really do hold their own on cornering, especially in dry conditions, which is what they're designed for. Now obviously they don't have the complete confidence and side bite of more aggressive trail tires, but I would put these on par with more aggressive XC tires that I'm used to riding. And they even did surprisingly well in those loose over hardpack conditions that I often encounter in the front range of Colorado. So now that the acute performance metrics of these tires seem to be proven well, let's talk about the real question I'll have for these long term. That's durability and longevity. One of the aspects that really surprised me about those prior XR series tires that I kept on the bike was how long they lasted, despite also being low tread, fast rolling XC tires. And they were also extremely durable. Despite taking them on the occasional spicy trail run, I never had a failure from them. Thus far, with about 350 miles racked up on these tires, they seem to be holding up quite well. Certainly from the durability standpoint, and while I can obviously see some wear, there's still a lot of life left in them. They've also been holding air quite well, only needing the occasional top off. That's standard for all bike tires. At about $77 per tire, I wouldn't say they're cheap, but they're certainly not as pricey as some of the other ultra lightweight, high performance tires in this segment. The Aspen ST 170 TPI tires I mentioned earlier go for over $100, as do the Schwalbe Racing Rick. I'll do an update on these tires later in the summer, but if these tires prove to have a lifespan even similar to that of the XR series, I'll count myself as really impressed. And that'll actually make them a strong value for an XC bike. But if the tread life doesn't last much longer, then it'll definitely be an indicator that these are really targeted for those who are actively racing and need to maximize their performance at the sacrifice of having to swap out the tires more frequently. As of now, I think they're certainly coming through to meet their marketing spec, and I'm hoping that they'll overachieve and have a respectable lifespan, making them a great all-around light-duty performance tire. So if you found this initial review helpful, drop a like down below. It really helps out the channel. If you have any comments or questions, drop those down in the comments down below. And if you want to follow along to see more videos on fat bikes, mountain bikes, and more, including a follow-up on these tires, subscribe now. Lots more coming, so stay tuned. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.